You are listening to Crossroads Church, bringing a real God to real people.
Nada? Good morning. Nothing. I could talk really loud. Check, check. What should we do? Hello, hello, hello. Batteries? No, they're new? All right. I don't know. Oh man. There's nothing harder for me. Oh, is it working now? No, okay. Using a handheld mic is very difficult for me because if you haven't noticed, I talk with my hands. You notice that? So, hey, welcome to Crossroads. I am Joel. I'm the teaching pastor here, and we're going to continue with our series today, Dreamers. This is the final installment in the series, and we're going to talk about what do you do when the dream comes true? Because here's what I'm convinced of. If you've got a dream in your heart, and we've all got dreams in our heart for our family, for our kids, for our futures, dreams of maybe attaining things that our parents could have never accomplished, or things that you didn't get as a kid growing up, but you're like, you know what, I'm going to make sure that my kids get that growing up. And so we've got these dreams, and we've got these hopes for our family, for our finances, for our future. Is it working now? And nope. Or you want to just take it and see if we can fix it? There we go. All right. And thank you. Thank you, Danny. Hand for Danny. So we've all got these hopes and dreams, and I believe that God has placed those dreams in our heart. But the thing about a God-sized dream is that when it comes to you, it's going to look like it's impossible. And I know a lot of us, we've got dreams for our future that as we look at the situations around us, we would say, yeah, I just don't know any way that that's ever going to happen. It's impossible, but there's still this spark of hope within us. You ever had that where you've got that spark of hope within you and something ignites it, but you don't want to get too excited because you're like, man, last time I got all excited, it didn't work out, right? And we've all got this spark of hope within us, and we've all got these hopes and dreams. So we're talking about what to do with that. And we talked the first week we're looking at the life of a guy named Joseph. This is Joseph from the book of Genesis. And Joseph, he grew up in a dysfunctional family, had all sorts of just dysfunction around him, so much so that his brothers sold him into slavery. And I said, man, you're in if you've always felt like you were at a disadvantage growing up because you had a dysfunctional family, well, hey, somebody always has it worse. Joseph had it worse. Hopefully your family never sold you into slavery. And if they didn't, you're in a good place, right? So we've been looking at his life. And today I want to talk about kind of the end of Joseph's story and what happened. But first I want to tell you about a story that happened in my life. When I was in my senior year of high school, I went to a very high academic achieving school, which was a problem for me because I was not high academic achieving. So I remember the guidance counselor, she called me out of class one day and she sat me down and she said, Joel, where are you going to go to college? And I said, well, I don't really want to go to college. And she said, yeah, that's not an option. Where are you going to go to college? And I said, well, I don't really have a vision for college right now. What I want to do is play music. And she goes, yeah, you need a real job. Where do you want? And I got so frustrated. And she said, well, listen, you've got to figure out where you're going to go to college, okay? And by the way, what classes are you going to take next semester? Are you going to take physics, this or that? And here's the thing about science classes. I had been making D's in science for like all of high school, and I didn't really want to do that anymore. So I was like, I want to take a music class. She goes, yeah, music isn't an option. That's not part of the college track. And I said, but I don't want to go to college. She's like, I understand, but you can't take music. And I said, well, I'm not going to take physics. She's like, well, you have to. I was like, I'm not going to take it. She's like, okay, well, then you have to take biology. I was like, not going to take biology. Because I was tired of making D's in high school. I was like, I want something I can make an A at. So finally, she surrendered, and she said, okay, fine. I'll let you take a music class, but just know this, you'll never go to college. She's like, nobody will want you if you haven't taken these classes. And I was like, okay, well, good, because I didn't want to go to college anyway. So I walked out of there in my mind with this thing. This lady, she just did not believe in me, right? It was clear she didn't believe in me. It was clear that she had a specific thing that she thought I should do, and that if I didn't do it, I was not adequate for her. So for the rest of the year, she kind of ignored me. And I was the class president, interestingly enough, so we had to have a lot of interaction, but she would always kind of downplay anything I did, or if I'd get up and talk, she would kind of like undermine anything I said to the students. And I didn't like this lady. Long time didn't like this lady. Well, eventually, I moved back to the United States. This was in Central America. I moved back to the U.S., and I found out about a little thing called community college, and man, they'll let anybody in if you got money. So I started going to community college, and I ended up getting my degree. I got an undergraduate degree in political science, and I remember, like, this is the craziest thing, but I remember when I took that final exam after, like, my last test to where I was ready to graduate, and I walked out of school, and I remember thinking this: if she could see me now. That lady, that guidance counselor, I almost used her name. I can't say it. I'll just call her that lady. That lady, if she could see me now. And here's the crazy thing is, I scheduled a trip to go back to Guatemala to hopefully bump into her. And I did. I got down there, and the first day we're there, I had like my speech all prepped and we ran into her in a restaurant. She's like, "Oh, Joelle, how are you?" And I'm like, "Oh, good. I just graduated college." And she goes, "Oh, that's wonderful," and then left. And I remember thinking, that lady hasn't thought about me at all since she ruined my dreams. And here's the thing I know about everybody in this room this morning. Here's what I know about you. You think we're operational now? Let's see. That'll be better because I can talk with my hands. And nothing. Nope. All right, I can keep using it. Here, let me just take this whole thing and we can get it fixed in the meantime. Excuse me as I undress. All right. You like those moves? Okay. So here's what I know about everybody in here, right? Every one of us, we've got somebody that as we look back over our life, they didn't believe in us. Somebody that didn't believe in you, right? And you may have said something like this: "I'll show them." And I have seen people who throughout their lives, they're driven by this right here. I've seen guys ruin their marriages because their father didn't believe in them, and so they've been working their tail off at this career, saying, "Dad, I'll show Dad. I really am a man. I'll show him. I'll show him." And they ruin their marriages, and they ruin their life, all because they're trying to prove, "I'll show them." Some of you, when the dream comes true, kind of like me, you get to a place and you go like this: "Oh, if they could see me now. If my ex-husband could see me now." Right? And we've all got people in our lives who didn't believe in us. Now here's the challenge we face, okay? At some point in your life, you're going to have to let those people go, because here's the thing: they're not even thinking about you. Like my situation, I was driven. I'm going to show that lady, that goofy guidance counselor, who was a horrible guidance counselor, FYI. I'm going to show her. And then I got that degree, and then I got it, and I talked to her, and I said, "Look, I finally got this degree." And she's like, "Oh, that's nice." Whoop-de-doo. She hadn't given me a second thought. But you know what? She had been circling in my mind for years. I'll show her. I'll show her. So this whole series has been based on this premise that God's dream for you is bigger and better than any dream you have for yourself. Like, if you could see what God wants for you. I've said it this way, that my dad says, your dream for yourself, God's dream for you is what your dream would be for yourself if you knew all the details. But the challenge is we don't know all the details, right? So a lot of times we dream smaller than what God wants in us, and he puts a dream in our heart for something better, a better financial situation than we can even imagine, a better situation for our family, our healthier relationships, healthier marriage than we could ever imagine. But the challenge we face is we just can't see it sometimes. And the worst part is a lot of people around us can't see it, and they'll tell you that's not realistic, and they don't believe in your dream. They don't believe in your dream. And as we look at the story of Joseph, we see that as he was pursuing, he got this dream when he was a kid, and in this dream, he was in charge of his brothers. Like all of his brothers were bowing down to him. And he has this dream as a teenager, and he goes and tells his brothers, and they don't like that. Like, no sibling likes it when their other sibling says, "I'm going to be the king and you're going to worship me," right? And that doesn't work. Speaking of that, have y'all listened to Kanye's album? Anyway, random thought. Very interesting, that whole Kanye West transition thing. I just think of that because one time he said, I'm God, right? Yeah, anyways, now he's saying Jesus is God. Anyway, totally random pop culture note. But a lot of times, the people that don't believe in us the most are our families. So we talked that first week about the fact that whenever God puts a dream in your heart, it'll often be something that's beyond what's familiar. And so sometimes the worst people that don't believe in you is your family. And so a lot of times we're trying to prove to our family that, you know, we can be what we're going to be, what we believe God has put in our heart. And if you look at the story of Joseph, Joseph gets thrown into a pit and sold into slavery by his brothers. And we looked at him, and things go from bad to worse for him. But we see in the text, this is a few weekends ago, the last 3 weekends we've been talking about this. So if this is all new to you, go back and listen to the sermon series. I'm not going to repeat it all, but you can listen to it on the app. And we see that it says God was with Joseph even in the middle of the greatest struggles. And my point during week 2 was this: you have to constantly remind yourself that God didn't bring you this far to ditch you. And a lot of you, man, you're struggling right now, but here's the thing: you've been through struggles before, and you're still here, and you're stronger for it. And so you can't ever forget that no matter what the pit is, no matter what the prison you're in, like Joseph, he felt like he was in a prison, God didn't bring you this far to just ditch you. He's got a plan because his dream for you is bigger than the dream that you have for yourself. So Joseph gets thrown into prison, sold into slavery, lied about, then things go from bad to worse. He gets thrown into prison. And last week we saw that he begins to interpret the dreams of some of his compatriots in the prison there. And through that, I'm going to shorten the story. You guys need to read it. And if you go to your Grow group, you'll read through the whole story. But he ends up getting promoted literally overnight, rags to riches story. He gets promoted to being the second most powerful man in Egypt. And then a famine strikes. There's a drought all over the world in that area. And all of a sudden, his brothers show up in his court where he is now in charge, and they come begging for help, but they don't recognize Joseph. Can you imagine what that moment must have been like? Joseph standing there, and all of a sudden he recognizes his brothers. They don't recognize him, and he's like, his mind flashes back to that dream he had when he was a kid. He's like, oh, it's happening. It's happening. Now, yeah, and that would be the first thing I would think is, oh, woo, it's going down. Revenge, right? Because, I mean, I'm just going to be really honest about myself. I'm not on that. Have you ever heard of the Enneagram test? I'm this Enneagram personality test. I'm an 8, and we are horrible about revenge. Like, if you fall out of favor with us, just FYI, don't ever cross me, okay? Because I can think of some diabolical things that I will do, right? That's in my natural state. I can get revenge. Like, I want revenge. And I think about what Joseph, all that time in prison, what he must have been thinking, man, I'm gonna get them. And then all of a sudden he gets promoted. What would it have been like? And then they're dropped right in front of him, and he's standing there, and he has a decision to make. What is he gonna do? So we look at Joseph's story. He tests his brothers a few times to kind of see where their heart is. See, hey, have these guys changed? And this is what ends up happening. They're freaking out that he is gonna come down on them. And here's what Joseph ends up saying to them. Then Joseph said to his brothers, come here, come close to me. When they'd done so, he said, I'm your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt. I mean, can you imagine their hearts sinking, them going, oh. He says, and now, don't be distressed. Don't worry, guys. Don't be angry with yourselves for selling me here. This is fascinating. I would have been like, you should be angry at yourself for selling me here. But he says, I don't even want you to be angry with yourself for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. For 2 years now, there's been a famine in the land, and for the next 5 years, there will be no plowing and reaping. But God did this. He sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant on earth, basically to save our family and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So then, it was not you who did this to me. This is an interesting thing to think about. It was not you who did this to me, but God. He made me father to Pharaoh, Lord of his entire household, and ruler of all of Egypt. Now, I know that every one of us in this room, maybe the person's in your mind right now that you've thought, yeah, maybe it's that ex-husband, or maybe it's that ex-boss, or maybe it's that teacher that never believed in you, or maybe it's that parent that never believed in you, or that father that you could just never live up to, or that mother who was always just kind of pressing you down, and you're saying, And you've been living with deep within you with this desire to prove to them, no, I can do this. And here's the thing. This is a little rhyme I spent a lot of time working on, so we're going to say this all together. You'll fully enjoy the dream coming true when you choose to forgive the ones who hurt you. But until you do, you'll never be able to fully enjoy the dream coming true. Because here's the thing, man. You may get remarried. You get out of that horrible marriage, you get remarried, and all you're thinking about is, man, if I could show him now, if I could show her now, I am worthy of love. I am worthy of love. And so that driving force, that will pollute your current marriage. The dream came true. God gave you another spouse. But here's what happens, man. If you don't choose to let go of what happened to you and the person who didn't believe in you, it will pollute you. And this happens all of the time. I mean, I think about just that my little dumb example of graduating. I'm graduating, and the whole time, instead of enjoying the moment, I'm thinking, yeah, man, I'm going to show that lady. And listen, that lady didn't even care about me. But she was getting all this headspace up here. She was getting space she totally did not deserve because I refused to let it go. And in your life, if you'll hold on to the dream, you'll be faithful, you'll stay with your integrity, don't compromise, God will make the dream come true in your life. But the question is, what are you going to do with all of the people in the past who hurt you? Because you'll never be able to fully enjoy the dream coming true until you choose to forgive those who hurt you. Let's say this together. Ready? 1, 2, 3. You'll fully enjoy the dream coming true when you choose to forgive the ones who hurt you. But until you do that, you don't get to enjoy it fully because you're giving headspace to those people who hurt you. And listen, I've seen over and over again, guys, this is like the biggest, when I see people that are stuck and they come to me and tell me I'm stuck, I feel like I've plateaued in my walk with God, I'm stuck, I feel like I'm just going in circles. Nearly every time it comes back to this issue. There's somebody in your past you haven't chosen to forgive, and you haven't chosen to let go of the hurt that was done to you. And our faith is built on forgiveness. It's built on one man, Jesus Christ, shouldering and absorbing everything that you ever did wrong to God and to him, and not holding it against you. He set the example for us. That's the amazing thing about Jesus. He always sets the example for us. He says, I'm not going to ask you to do something I haven't done. And he says, listen, I need you to shoulder it, and I need you to not hold it against him. In fact, God says that he says, I'll remember your sins no more. And he says, I want you to now go do likewise. You've got to choose to forgive the ones who hurt you. And a lot of times, here's another really big truth. A lot of times the breakthrough that you're looking for in your life, where you've got that dream and you see it on the cusp of happening and you see the freedom that it could bring, but a lot of times I've seen that the last step that to get you to where you need to go, to where that dream comes true, is for you to forgive those who have hurt you. I've seen over and over again that breakthrough comes in people's lives. I've been hanging out in the church for about 40 years, so I've seen a lot of stuff, right? The last step, it's kind of like the last wall you've got to get through before your dream comes true is for you to let go of what was done to you. I was talking to a girl the other day. She's like, her business is really succeeding. She's had to work hard. And I started talking to her, and she said, I'm never going to forgive my ex-husband. And I said, but like, life is going well. And she goes, yeah. But here's the thing. He promised he would be there for me. I got pregnant, and then he got thrown in prison, and he's locked up for 14 years now. I'm going to raise this kid by myself. I will never forgive him for doing that to me, and I have to work extra hard to provide for this child, and I love the child. And she's like, but you know the challenge is every time I look at my child, I think about that, she called him a bad word, husband of mine. She's like, and he's locked up, and he talks about how hard it is in prison. She's like, he's got all of his meals taken care of. He's like, he doesn't know pain. And I could just see the bitterness and resentment in her. And I just, man, she's got a successful business, but she can't even enjoy what she's got. She can't enjoy the child she has. She can't enjoy the business she has because she's still holding on to what this guy did. And here's the thing. He's so self-centered, he can't even see the pain she's going through. He doesn't care. So she's given him headspace he doesn't deserve. In fact, I've heard it said this way. When you choose to forgive, it's like letting the prisoner free and realizing you were the one behind bars. But we're all guilty of that because there's always somebody that hasn't believed in us. And we've got to recognize this. I don't understand how it all pans out, and not everything is God's will that happens on this earth, but I'm absolutely convinced of this. God can turn everything that happens into something that works within his will if you'll give him the freedom to do that. No matter what happened to you. This is what Joseph said. I don't believe it was God's will that Joseph was thrown into a pit, but I believe that God was working out his will through it. And in your life, man, I know some of you have had some horrible things that have been done to you, things that nobody should ever have to endure. Maybe some of you were robbed of your innocence in a time that it's just wrong that it happened. I mean, it is wrong, and it makes you mad just thinking about it. It makes me mad thinking about what was done to you. But here's the thing about it, guys. You cannot control, you can't change what happened to you. You just can't. There's no way to change what happened to you, no matter how unjust it was. But here's the thing. The only thing you do have control over is how you're going to respond to what happened to you. And your response is what makes the difference between how far you go. And I'll tell you what, if you walk in forgiveness, there's no upper limits to where God can take you. But if you stay choosing to hold on to that past thing that happened to you, you're going to be trapped. And here's the thing that God says, unless you can release it to me, I believe God is always wanting to give us good things, but a lot of times our hands are holding on so tightly to the past and things from the past that there's not even any space for us to hold what God wants to give us. And some of you, God's saying, guys, you don't understand what I've got for you, but man, it's really good, but I need you to do something. I need you to open up your hands and let go of what that person did to you so I can fill those hands with really good stuff. And a lot of times it's just on the other side of the wall of choosing to forgive that all of a sudden those dreams that you've been hoping for and you just felt like you've been blocked and blocked and blocked, oftentimes that wall is unforgiveness and choosing to not let go of it. So really quick, I'm going to just blow through this 3 myths that people believe about forgiveness. First one is I hear people say this all the time. Well, I'll just know in my heart when it's the right time to forgive. I'll feel it. Nope. You won't. I've walked a lot of people through forgiving others. I've had to forgive people myself, and I forgave them before I felt it because it's really hard to wait for the feeling. In fact, the feeling probably won't come because you were treated poorly. Somebody didn't believe in you. Somebody did you wrong. Some people actually tried to sabotage the dream you had in your heart, right? Some of you have been through rough divorces where your spouse, not only did they want the divorce, they wanted to destroy your life in the process. And you say, man, I just can't let that go. Well, listen, you've got to choose to let that go. And don't wait for the feeling. Because the longer you wait, the more headspace that person is getting in your mind, and they don't even deserve that space. They don't. Not only that, but we're commanded as, if you're here this morning and we're like, well, I'm not sure how I feel about God. Okay, then whatever. This is good for you. Physiologically, there's actually proof that unforgiveness, harboring bitterness, and resentment actually causes physical damage to your body. But as Christians, this isn't optional. It's something we've got to do because Jesus did it. So you don't get the option here, but here's the thing. Everything that God asks of us is for our good. So I want to encourage, if you're waiting for the feeling, hey, don't wait any longer. Here's the feeling for you. Okay, there's your feeling. You can do this. You can choose to forgive right now, right? The second thing I hear oftentimes is, well, I can't forgive them until they admit their guilt, right? I can't forgive them. And this is what's really interesting about what Jesus did. He died on the cross to forgive your sins before you even knew it. Now, you're not Jesus, but here's the thing. You don't sit around waiting for somebody to admit their guilt for you to forgive them. You choose to forgive them whether they admit their guilt or not. And the third thing is, I hear people say this all the time, you got to just forgive and forget. Baloney. You can't forgive and forget. Your brain's too powerful for that, okay? In fact, if you have forgotten something, it's probably because it's incredibly traumatic. Psychologically. But here's the thing. If you're sitting around waiting to forget the incident to believe you've forgiven, that's not true at all. As Christians, we don't forgive and forget. We forgive and choose to remember with forgiveness. So that's what we have to do. You forgive and choose to remember with forgiveness. And here's the thing. When you choose to forgive, there's this quote I love by Viktor Frankl. He says this is a guy who went through the horrors of the Nazi extermination camps. He said this, in some ways suffering ceases to be suffering at the moment it finds a meaning, such as the meaning of sacrifice. A lot of times what you've got to do is you've just got to choose to forgive, and until you choose to forgive, you're not going to see what God was doing through it. And I think that's what happened. Looks at the story of Joseph. Imagine if Joseph would have just come in and crushed his family for what they did to him. Can you imagine what? Well, the whole Bible would have been different, because you know what? The founding of the Hebrew people was that family right there. Literally, without Joseph having preserved them and believing God had a plan for that, the whole line would have been wiped out by that famine. But God had a plan, and God has a plan in your life too. And a lot of times you're not going to see the meaning right now. You can say, man, why did this have to happen? How did they get away with this? Why did they do this? You may not see all the meaning, but I'll tell you this. When you trust God that he's got meaning in it, there is a reason for what happened. Again, it wasn't his will, but man, he can turn it around to benefit his will if you'll let him. But if you're holding on so tightly that he can't work through you, because you're holding on to that and saying, I'm not going to release control of this, I believe he says, all right, I'm going to have to let you go your way, because God's never going to force anything on you. But it's up to you. It's up to you to forgive. And here's the thing. Until you forgive, you're just going to, it's like putting on glasses that taint your view. You ever had dirty glasses? If you ever worn dirty glasses or had swimming goggles, they're just dirty. My daughter has these little orange swimming goggles, and she loves them. She's like, it makes everything orange. And here's the thing. A lot of us, man, we're wearing goggles of looking at the world around us through a certain way because of a hurt we had in the past. And I love this verse that King Solomon says. He says this, listen, above all that you do, keep your heart with all vigilance. You know what it means to be vigilant? It means you're like constantly aware, because from it flow the springs of life. And if you've ever gone here to New Braunfels and seen that bubbling stream that comes out, I see people just put their water bottle right up to it to get water straight out of the spring. Man, you can get it straight out of the spring when it's that pure. But man, a little bit downstream, all sorts of stuff has gotten into the water, and you don't want to be drinking it downstream. But if you get it straight from the source, it's nice and pure and clear. And that's the image that comes to my mind here. He's saying, listen, you make sure that water in your heart is always clear. Be checking on it all the time, because man, if you can do that, it's going to go really well for you. Don't let anything pollute that spring in your heart. And if there's something that's been polluting you for months, maybe it's something that happened last night, maybe it's something that happened years ago, I want to encourage you, man, let's get the goggles off so we can start to see clearly, and we can start to guard our heart with all vigilance, because the springs of life that God has for you, the full life that he has for you, the dreams he has for you are all going to come when you choose to forgive and let go of whatever that ex-husband did to you, whatever that family member did to you, whatever your father did to you, your mother. Until you do that, man, you're going to be stuck. But once you choose to forgive, I believe that every dream that God has for you will come true. I really believe it. Because, man, his dream for you is bigger than the dream you have for yourself. It's way bigger. You can't even see what he has for you, and it would probably scare you if you did. So you just take it one step at a time, and the first step to opening up your eyes to all that God has for you is to choose to forgive. And here's the thing. Some of you, the person you need to forgive is yourself. God forgave you. What gives you the right to not forgive yourself? God, the most powerful force in the universe, said, hey, it's all taken care of through Jesus. Now you need to let it go, what you did to yourself. Just let it go and trust that even that big mess you made of your life, God can turn it around. Like that. He can turn it around for your good, just like he did with Joseph. And all of a sudden you find yourself standing in a place going, oh my goodness, I can't believe this happened. And now, rather than turn and get vengeance on those who came against me, I'm going to use it to bless my family and everyone around me, even the people that didn't believe in the dream. Do you guys receive that? Man, I could talk about this literally every Sunday, because I know that every one of us have stuff in our hearts. And I even as I was preparing the message, driving home yesterday from Houston, I was thinking, there's still some people I need to just let it go in my life, because I still think about them too much. And I think about what they did to me and how they didn't believe in me and how they hurt me. And you got to let it go. And so it's a constant purifying of your heart. Say, God, man, I realize I haven't forgiven them purely. And remember, it's not forgive and forget. It's forgive and choose to remember with forgiveness, because it'll come back up. But if it comes back up and brings condemnation where you feel like you haven't forgiven, there's no condemnation for those who are in Christ. You've been set free from that. So just walk in forgiveness. And when that thought comes back up of what that person did, nope, just like Jesus forgave me, I choose to forgive them. That's the freedom that you need to make sure that you really get to enjoy the dream. Because you'll fully enjoy the dream coming true when you choose to forgive the ones who hurt you.
Thanks for listening. For more, visit www.crossroadsc.com.